Hi everyone, I'm Moonread, and today I'm going to show you how to use the Oracle of the Radiant Sun to answer real-life practical questions like, will I get a job? Will they text or call me again? Should I move? Where can I find my keys? Is this person trustworthy? And many, many more. This method is a shortcut version of Horary astrology, a way to get clear answers without using any astrology software, math, or charting tools. All you need is this deck and a focused question. So, what is horary astrology? Horary astrology is a traditional form of divination where you ask a specific question and the answer comes from the stars at the exact moment the question is understood. It's like a birth chart, but instead of a person being born, it's the question itself that's born. So here's a quick side-by-side chart. On the left side, you'll see the traditional horary astrology. It uses the person's question at the exact time and location. And then from that, you can gather the information you need to cast a full chart. You need to calculate the planetary strengths, house rulerships, aspects, and many other things. It's really powerful but complex. On the other hand, on the right side, you'll see the Oracle of the Radiant Sun. It actually simplifies all of this. Each card is already given a planet in a zodiac sign, kind of like a tiny snapshot of a chart, and you interpret it using the keywords, the symbolism, and the house that applies to your question. It's not as precise, but it provides an accurate answer, especially when you use the correct spread. In this video, I'll show you how to use this deck in a simplified horary tool by breaking it down into 3 simple steps. So the very first step you'll see, you just have to ask a very clear, specific question. In this case, you can ask a yes or no question. It should be direct, something like, will I hear back this week? Shall I accept this offer? Or can I trust this person? Now with step 2, you're going to identify which houses apply. So each question related to an area of life. For example, a career question uses the first house, which represents you, and the 10th house, which represents the job or your public status. And then I'll have a cheat sheet for all of these different houses, so it'll be really easy for you to understand. And then step 3, interpretation. Here we'll pay attention to the illustration on the cards, the keyword, the planet and sign, and we'll get information on dignity or debility if necessary. Now, tips. Sun cards in this particular deck signifies clarity, strength, and a yes. Moon cards are about instinct, emotion, and possible changes, while Venus cards are about desire, harmony, and attraction. Saturn signifies delays, loss, commitment, or hard lessons that you have to learn. So in the rest of this video, I'll walk you through 5 of the most common questions people have and show you exactly how to use this deck to answer them. And if you like that cheat sheet that I mentioned before, mapping these real life questions to astrological houses, I have it linked below. All right, let's start. All right, so we'll start with a common question, will I get the job? To answer this question, we will examine the first house, which is you, the 10th house, which is the job, the 6th house, which is the work itself, like your day-to-day duties, the 2nd house, which will talk about the money and your salary, and then the 7th house, which is the employer or the interviewer. All right, let's start. All right, so the very first thing we did was ask the question, determine the houses, and then we make a dial with the cards here, starting with 1 here and just moving along until we have all 12. Now for the very first card is the first house, and this represents you. So for you, we have the Sun in Virgo, which is titled Health. This card shows 3 attendees tending to this person in the center, and this indicates service, skill, and attention to detail. So this suggests that you're approaching this opportunity with care. You're showing that you have a skill level and attention to detail that's necessary for this job. But you might also be overthinking. The Sun here shows that you want to shine by being useful, but Virgo's perfectionism may make you feel worried about not being enough, okay? Now let's move on to the 2nd house. The 2nd house is about salary and compensation. We have versatility, another Sun card, but this time in Gemini. So visually, this card features an acrobat, right? And we have here these little solar symbols above. And this is about adaptability. You may be called to juggle tasks, switch lanes very quickly, or impress with communication skills. So in essence, this is telling you it's not going to be a steady income. It's really about how you're going to be able to mentally navigate this, have the mental agility and creative skills in order to navigate this job, in order to be compensated for what you're worth. All right, let's move on to the sixth house. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the sixth house, we have Jupiter in Sagittarius, titled Principal. So a figure stands here. I'm sorry, not a figure, a bird, as well as the Pope headdress. And this evokes teaching, leadership, or guiding others with vision. Jupiter here means that it's not just about tasks, it's about a mission. If this is the job you're pursuing, it likely carries a sense of purpose. You're stepping into something with depth, not just a paycheck. So this is more about principles. So let's move on to the seventh house, which represents the other party. So that's going to be the person who's interviewing you, or perhaps your boss. So if this was sixth, this is seventh. All right, so we have Saturn in Leo. The image shows here a person standing before a crowd, someone who actually performs, but one that is performing in their own terms. Saturn says there's respect that has to be earned. The employer may be slow to offer praise or opportunities. They expect presence, polish, confidence, as this speaker here that you're seeing. But this card still continues to indicate that there is potential for support and recognition through the interview, just as long as you do come across polished. All right, let's move on to the 10th house. So that's 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th. Let's see if you can see this one a little bit clearer. If I pull it up here. The 10th house will represent your career outcome. We see Mercury in Capricorn, which is organization. As you can see, there's a hand that's holding a staff of wheat here, ready for harvest, a symbol of effort bearing fruit. So this card is about structured thinking, leadership through careful planning, and long-term goals. You've been evaluated for how well you can bring about focus and maturity to this role. If you can communicate clearly and think strategically, the outcome is very favorable for you with card 10. So let's see if I can pull these up here. All right. So let's do a final summary here. As I mentioned before with the tips, we have sun coming in and then generosity at the end. And I feel like this kind of represents your employer here. So to answer the question, will you get the job? The card leans towards a definite yes. It comes with conditions though. You need to impress them, right? Through versatility, consistency with the organization card. This role may grow into something deeply fulfilling for you, and that comes in with the principal card here. If you stay grounded and then lead with focus, it's not about overperforming, it's about proving that you're the right person for the long haul. So that is the end of that. Let's move on to the next question. Now for the next commonly asked question, will they text or call me again? The houses pertaining to love questions are delineated by the screen, as you could see here, but the ones for texting, we're going to concentrate on the first house, which represents you, the third house, which represents communication, the seventh house, which indicates the other person, and we can also pull a moon card, which will tell us more about how things will unfold or the emotions behind this particular connection. All right, let's start. All right, just like the previous question we did, we asked the question, determine what houses we're going to look at, and then pull out the spread in a 12 card wheel. So the very first card will be your first house, and then we'll move clockwise. The first one here represents you in this situation, in this particular case, this relationship. So the first house you see here, we have Mars and Virgo, and the image shows a finger that's pointing critically at the person before it. And you also see an eye fixated at the details here of the flower arrangement. This tells you that you're in your head. You may be overanalyzing what's been said, how you came across when you were speaking, or even judging yourself harshly. As you can see, it's coming back. There's a sense of self-inflicted pressure here. You want clarity, but it might also be driving yourself a little anxious trying to find that clarity, especially if the person is not forthcoming in this messages. So let's see all about the communication, which will be your third house. Oh, okay. So here we drew Mercury in Libra, which is titled Influence. This card features Adam and Eve here with a serpent's tongue between them, a symbol of temptation and charm. In this context, it suggests that the communication might have been flirtatious, but not necessarily clear or forthright. Text might have been carrying mixed messages or meant to influence subtly. There is an attraction here, but it's also a careful balance of power. Someone here didn't want to say too much or too little. It's all very methodical in a sense. All right, I'll just keep these flipped up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The seventh house shows the other person in this relationship. And this is represented by Saturn and Taurus. And the title is Ostentation, I'm sorry. This image is striking. It's a chariot here with a sense of wealth and presentation and someone reclining right on display. This image suggests that the focus may not be necessarily emotional connection, but rather on image and status and even control. And you see that also played out in the influence card that we just previously looked at. They might be holding back from communication to preserve pride or to avoid looking vulnerable. And with Saturn involved, like we mentioned before, this is all about delays, right? Delays or silence are likely because of the fact that it's showing up here in the other person. This is going to occur especially if they feel they're not in control of how they're perceived, where they're going to just kind of back away and not communicate, especially their feelings. So I'm going to stop here. I'm going to gather all the cards and look for the moon cards. This is not a moon card, but it'll have a little symbol of a crescent moon here. And from there, I'm going to pick a moon card to determine like the emotional current here in regards to the relationship. Give me 1 second. All right, so for the moon card here, we have practicality. So this is moon in Capricorn. This is slow, careful, emotionally restrained energy. The figure here isn't acting from impulse. They're operating from logic and caution, and this is also emphasized with this card here. This suggests that the emotional tone of the connection is very controlled by the other person. If there are emotions, they're not necessarily being expressed spontaneously. The other person may not reach out unless they have a clear reason to do so, and they had the time to kind of weigh in on their next move. So in summary, if we were to look at all these cards here to determine will they text or call? Possibly, but only if it serves a practical or social function on their behalf. The cards here suggest there's hesitation, emotional restraint, and the need for control, as you can see with these cards here. If they do reach out, it likely won't be from vulnerability, but more from a calculated reasoning behind it. It won't be a grand emotional gesture or romantic confession unless something else changes. All right, so let's move on to the next question. All right, the next question is, should I move? For this question, we will focus on the first house, the fourth house, the seventh, and the ninth house. As an option, we can also pull a moon card just to determine the emotional undercurrent in regards to this move. All right, let's start. All right, like the questions before, we asked the question, determined which houses we needed to work with, and then did a 12 card dial as a spread. So the very first house, which is this one right here, represents you in regards to the question, should I move? So here we have Venus in Taurus, and it's titled Romance. This card shows a couple dancing, surrounded by pleasure, harmony. This reflects your desire to live comfortably, or that you are idolizing what life could be like in your new place. You're dreaming of a more beautiful, cozy type of lifestyle. But with Venus energy, aka Taurus energy, it could also represent resisting discomfort or risk, making it harder to leave what feels secure. So let's move on to the fourth house, and that'll be your current home. So the fourth house, I'll keep this open. 2, 3, 4, fourth house. Now, in regards to your current home, we got the card Discovery. We pulled Mercury in Sagittarius. The image here shows a person that inside the tomb with the scanning horizon. You will feel restless or constrained where you are. This card suggests the mind is elsewhere, seeking new experiences, adventure, or a broader sense of meaning, as you can see here with the globe and the ocean. This card favors education, spiritual growth, and movement as represented. All right, so let's move on to house 7th, which is your new place. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th. All right, let's take a look. Okay, we've got Saturn in Libra, which is devotion, as you can see here with a dove, staying loyally with its partner even though it looks like it passed away. It's a sign of long-term commitment. Saturn reveals slow development. If you were to move, it will require endurance, responsibility, and a willingness to work through discomfort. It suggests that the new place may not feel right immediately, and it's something that you'll have to grow into. All right, so let's work on the 9th house, which should represent the long distance travel or change. So that was 7th, 8th, 9th. Okay, flattery. So this is Venus in Gemini, and this is the god Janus with the two faces appearing here, looking both forward and backward. This shows ambivalence. You may find yourself being pulled in two different directions, taking yourself into the move one day and then talking yourself out of it the next. The Gemini tendency towards versatility and charm might cause you to kind of gloss over or not really think about the red flags that you might be seeing with this potentially new move, or avoid commitment. All right. Now we're going to, well, actually I want to pull a moon card in order to see the emotional undercurrent in regards to this, especially because this is somebody who's experiencing a little bit of ambivalence, and so we'll get a little bit more information in regards to that. So I'm going to pull all of the moon cards out of this and we'll go from there. All right, so I pulled the moon cards and picked one, and this is it. This will tell us the emotional undercurrent in regards to the question about moving and whether they should. Okay, we got practicality again. So this card brings us back down to earth. It cautions against being impulsive. You're being emotionally reserved right now, trying to make the smart decision, or it should make the smart decision. The scene here on the card is orderly, restrained, reminding us that you're seeking a move that is logistically sound and not just emotionally enticing. Or it could tell us that you should be doing this. So putting this all together, lay this down here a little bit. It looks like you're being torn towards two desires, one for pleasure, beautiful new life, that Venus and Taurus life that you see here, and one for expansion and growth, what you see right here with Mercury in Sagittarius. But the moon reminds you that this decision will require practicality and not fantasy. If you're truly ready to commit, we have devotion here, this could be a steady but slow transformation. Just don't get stuck in the flattery or indecision of the Gemini energy that we're seeing here. Moving may be the right path, but you need to be clearly devoted and not just a hopeful feeling that you're experiencing initially with that spark of Venus in Taurus. Okay? So this is a yes, but only if you are clearly devoted that this is not going to be an easy task. All right, let's move to the next question. All right, let's move on to the fourth question. And this is a common love question. Will this relationship turn into something more serious? For this question, we will focus on the first house, the fifth, the seventh, and the 10th. And we will pull also a moon card to determine the emotional undercurrent like we have done in a couple of the previous questions. All right, so let's start. All right, as we did before, we asked the question, will this relationship turn into something more serious? We will focus on the appropriate houses. In this case, it'll be the first, fifth, seventh, and 10th house, starting here at the first house. And we put the spread in a 12-card zodiac wheel spread. So as we mentioned, the very first card is you in the relationship. And as you could see here, it's decision, Mars in Gemini. So here you see the chessboard on the card, and it's trying to, at least you're trying to make a careful strategic decision. You might be analyzing the situation, trying to calculate your next move rather than following your heart. The dark doorway here in the background is telling you you don't know where this is going. There's a desire to act, but there's also hesitation. You want it to work out, but there's uncertainty clouding your path forward. All right, so let's move on to the fifth house. 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so the fifth house is about romance, fun, attraction. So it's going to speak up on that. So here we have the sun, which is a good sign, in Sagittarius, and this card is enthusiasm. So for this card, the image shows a glowing figure here, and it's floating in a jar. This is an alchemical container, and the little stopper here that we have is a person kind of representing the sun here with the sun in the background. So this gives you a sense of possibility and even joy. The connection likely started with excitement and curiosity, but then also the jar implies a delay. Like your hopes are waiting to be realized and materialized. However, this card still stays optimistic. It suggests that there is potential, right? The jar is full of promises, but it may need time or clarity to become something a little bit more stable, because right now it's not necessarily stable. It's kind of like building up. So let's move on to the seventh house. That was the fifth, sixth, seventh. The seventh house is the other person. In this case, we have Mercury in Gemini, which is excitement. This is symbolized by a fast-moving horse here, and it's galloping towards the sunlight. As you can see here, we have clouds, dark clouds. And we have here like a really strong tower here in the distance. So this person might enjoy the excitement of the relationship as they're moving towards that, but could struggle to commit or stay committed. And the reason I say that is that even though you see a good strong foundation to the building and it's not necessarily complete, the horse also shows me like there's a sense of struggle to commit or stay still. There's charm, curiosity, momentum, but it's not consistent. The card suggests movement towards something solid, but we're not there quite yet. So let's move on to the 10th house. Now this is about public status, commitment, marriage, how other people see this relationship going as well. So let's look at that. This was the 7th house, 8, 9, 10th. Okay, so we have Moon in Aries, which is protection. This house represents commitment, public status, or long-term structure. The image shows a mother cradling her children under the watchful eye of the tiger here. So it's a mix of nurturing and fierce emotional defensiveness. This card shows a deep desire for emotional safety. Someone in this relationship might be also protecting themselves, possibly due to past wounds or fear of rejection, but there's a longing for love. But also there's a need to feel safe before there's commitment can occur. So this is someone who's saying, I'll open up and only if I know I won't be hurt. All right. So let's look at the emotional undercurrent and then we'll summarize at the end. Give me 1 second while I grab all of the moon cards and pick from there. All right, so I picked a moon card here. Let's see what it is. Okay, just a reminder, this is a question in regards to whether this relationship will turn into something serious. We have Moon in Gemini. So this card reveals a heart that's emotionally curious but kind of split. The desire for connection is strong, but there's also a pull towards freedom, variety, or uncertainty. So in summary, if we were to put all these cards together here, I forgot there's another moon card. There's a real potential, strong attraction, shared excitement, and a mental connection, but emotionally someone's holding back. One of you may be unsure, cautious, or torn between options. It may grow into something more, but only with time, honesty, and emotional trust. All right, so let's move on to the next question. All right, so let's do a financial type of question. So the last practice question we'll do is this the right time to invest or spend this money? So the house is involved in finances. Specifically for this question, it'll be the first house, which is about you, second house, which is about your money, eighth house, which is other people's money, investments, loans, that kind of thing, the fifth house, which will be about the risk or the gambling or speculation, and then the 10th house, recognition, if it's a career or business expense, success, that kind of thing. All right, so let's start. Okay, as we've done with the previous questions, we asked the question, figured out which houses pertain to the question, and then we put it in a 12 card zodiac wheel type of spread. We're going to first start with the very first house, which should be this one here, and this will represent you in the question. Again, just a reminder, this question is about whether it's a good time to invest. So the first house here you have is Jupiter in Sagittarius. This card is principal. So this card represents the current state, which suggests spiritual clarity, tells us that the current is driven by deeply held beliefs, ethical motivations. This investment decision may be tied to something that's mission driven rather than just purely profits. So let's move on to the second house. The second house will govern money, resources, assets. Okay, so we got restlessness, and this is Mercury in Aries. In this picture here, we see Mercury himself sprinting through an urban landscape during a blazing sun here. The city behind him shows movement, pressure, and stimulation. But we also see a giant compass suggesting an attempt to orient himself, but everything is moving a little too fast. So Mercury in Aries symbolizes impatience, urgency, impulsive thinking, and in relation to here, we're seeing urgency and impulsive thinking around money. You might be seeking return on investment a little too quickly without giving any time for maturity. So let's try the fifth house, which should give you more insight about ventures, gambling, or speculation. 3, 4, 5. Okay, so we've got enthusiasm, which is Sun in Sagittarius. This card shows us The alchemical bottle, it's sealed with a man's head. Inside, the dark swirling liquid looks kind of like a starry night sky. This suggests potential, imagination, and an unknown outcome. The sun in Sagittarius brings us a sense of adventure and big picture optimism, but here the energy is contained. So it suggests that your excitement or creative vision is building up, but may not be fully actualized. So it hasn't really taken any form yet. So there's potential here, but it needs to be more clarity or structure before it's released. And that makes sense, especially when you have here Mercury suggesting that this is going a little too fast, but there's no maturity behind it. So let's look at the 8th house. That's 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th. So the 8th house is, shows Saturn in Virgo. So we have isolation. So this card shows a man hunched over, cloaked in solitude, while a friend tries to comfort him. In the distance, the buildings lie in ruin behind a garden fence. So here we suggest that there's financial burdens that may or not be visible at first glance. You might be entering a situation where the support systems falter, or there's an external partner that withdraws from this particular situation. There could also be a sense of needing to be perfect, right? Or control issues that stall the growth in regards to this particular venture. All right. And the 10th house when we're talking about success here. So that was 8th, 9th, 10th. All right, so we've got publicity. This is a really good card in this house. So this is Jupiter in Leo. The 10th house reflects public success and how the world sees this move. So here we have a winged figure, trumpets from the sky, casting stars down to the earth. It also shows a globe spinning underfoot. So this is a symbol of recognition and worldly reach, right? So it suggests that if you were to move forward wisely, letting things mature, letting things materialize at their own rate, that you have potential for public recognition and as well as visibility. So it might not be a quiet gain. The success will likely come with some sort of exposure. So if we were to put it all together and summarize here. So is this the right time to invest? There's internal clarity, enthusiasm, but there's also financial impatience and hidden hesitations. So if you temper your impulse, clarify your values, prepare for the weight of responsibility, let things materialize on their own, the answer very well will be a yes. Okay? So that is our last practice question. So now it's your turn. Ask a clear question, shuffle the deck, use the cheat sheets that I'll be providing below to interpret like a horary reader. If you try this, tag me. I'd love to see your reading. And again, thank you so much for watching. If this was helpful, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it. It really helps support this channel. Again, thank you so much. Take care, guys.